Southeastern Bow Hunter Podcast.
Guys, welcome to another episode of Southeastern Bow Hunter Podcast. In this one, man, we've had some hammers these past couple weeks, and this is going to be no different. We have this episode that I've been looking forward to, man. We are going to have Jared from OnX on to talk about what OnX is, why you should be using it, and what they're doing, in the hunting space with mapping software and all that other stuff to make it better for us who like to e-scout and also check out new areas. So it's going to be a really good episode. Very excited for everyone to listen to it. I hope you guys enjoyed the Bow Hunting League episode. We actually have partnered up with the Bow Hunting League. So if you aren't signed up yet, go to their Facebook page, find where you need to sign up, or go to their website, bowhuntingleague.com, and check out how you are able to sign up. If you don't have any team members, that's fine. You can partner with people outside of the state that you live in. And look, man, it's a lot of people, like I said on the episode, a lot of people are like, oh, I'm not going to win. It's not about winning, man. It's about meeting people in the hunting community and, the camaraderie that comes with that, and just meeting really good people. That's what they're doing over there at the Bow Hunting League is amazing. So please check them out. Please go get signed up. That is something that, I never would have thought possible for this podcast. I'm very, very thankful to Ben for wanting to partner up with us. So let's go do that. All right. The more people, the better it gets. Next up with the partners is going to be the Boutique. I still haven't sent out my arrows to Michael. I need to do that this week. It's just been a crazy week, but the Boutique does custom arrow wraps. He can make anything that you want. It's always top quality. They're very light compared to other wraps on the market, and they're just really good quality, dude. So go to the Boutique on Facebook, go to his website, go to Instagram. You can see everything that he does. And if you go up there and you either order a custom arrow wrap or you see something on the list of arrow wraps that he sells, and you like it and you want to get it, at shipping, use our code SEBHP, and that saves you free shipping. Next up is going to be Osseo gear. Osseo obviously is my camo choice that I've been using now for about 2 years. They are actually one of the first people we partnered up with, and it has been a great ride. I'm very thankful to be working with them. Joe Miles is a great dude. The company is awesome. The product is awesome. I think they're still running the preseason sale, which is 30% off certain items on their website. And then you can actually also use the code preseason30 to get 30% off of, I'm pretty sure, anything that's on that website. And if you want to, if you see something that's on sale and they have your size, you can also use our code SEBH, and that gets you an additional 15% off at checkout. So go check them out, osseogear.com. Next up is going to be Summit tree stands. Dude, what's funny is I've got my Summit Goliath, my Summit Dual Threat Pro SD behind me, and we are ready to go. I believe at the time of this recording, it's 7 weeks till deer season starts, and man, I'm itching. I am so ready. Did some public scouting, found a lot of good trees I'm gonna get my climber into on public. Actually moved a camera today over where Trike's at, set it up for a perfect tree that I hunted out of last year, and it was very, very, very beneficial, very, very good cover, all that stuff. And I know my climber, it's night and day difference between this one and the one I used to have. The one I used to have was great. So this one is going to be just out of the park, dude. It's going to be amazing. So go to summitstands.com, check out everything they have. You can find accessories, get new tree stands, safety harnesses, all that stuff, and use our code SEBH15 for 15% off anything you order site-wide. Next up is going to be Scout Tech. As I just mentioned, I moved one of my cameras on my lake property, and dude, the photo quality is amazing. It really is. What's funny is Scout Tech actually is partnered up with OnX. Those cameras, and I'm sure we're going to talk about this in the episode, but those cameras will connect with your OnX account, and you can actually have those cameras on your OnX app, and pretty much have them on your map so you know where they're at in case you've got some that are deep off in the woods. And you guys know it. For those of y'all that use Scout Tech, you know that they are just top of the line cameras. The new app is amazing. The update they did is amazing. There's new stuff coming, like unlimited data plans. There is actually an official Scout Tech camera that is going to be dropping soon. I cannot wait to use that. So go check out Scout Tech. They are still running that deal, 2 shadow cell cameras for $100, which is a steal, dude. That quality of cameras is fantastic. We're gonna run through the rest of these a little bit quick. Ace Hardware and Social Circle. Those are my boys, John, Mark. They do amazing work with bows. They sell anything that you need. And if you're someone in the area, you're driving through, or you want to make the drive, go to Social Circle Ace and go into the archery shop, and they will take care of you. Big shout out to those guys. Next up is going to be Bergie. And me and Bergie were actually just talking about some stuff. There's a lot of really big things coming from Bergie that I can't talk about just yet, but it's really exciting. And I think everybody that listens to this, Bergie's phone is going to be blowing up after you hear what he's got coming. So be on the lookout for that. Obviously, Bergie is a wizard with bows. He is able to tune literally anything. Bear shaft out to 15 yards, which blows my mind, to be honest with you. He gets a bullet hole every time after he's done working on the bow. So if you want to get your bow checked out by him, go to Bergie Bowsmith on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and I believe BergieBowsmith.com. And you can set it up where he gets to tune your bow. Next up is going to be VPA. So I got 2 broadheads that I am planning on using. I've been doing some testing, and it's been really, really good. The flight has been really good with one broadhead. The other one, I think, is just my arrow setup and all of that and what I've done and my new bow and just a lot of different things. But those broadheads perform flawlessly. I'm obviously talking about the Omega. The Omega is amazing, flies like a dart. The S7 is also an amazing broadhead. I've got a 3-blade VPA solid head that I plan on using this season. I mean, VPA makes everything, dude. So look, if you want a broadhead you can trust that is going to be accurate, go to VPA and get yourself some broadheads, man. VPArchery.com, 80 different types of broadheads. They also sell arrows on there. They sell VPA sells a traditional bow riser, which I think is pretty cool. There's just a lot of things that they do, man. And they're actually coming on for an episode here soon. So we are going to be talking about a lot of different things like the new Omega with bleeders. So if you go to VPArchery.com and you see anything you like, use our code SEBH10. That'll save you 10% off everything. Next up is going to be Dialed Archery. I've got my Dialed Arxos. As you can see, if you're watching the video, it's kind of hard to tell, but it's right over there on my Bear Whitetail Max. That sight is fantastic. It is literally, it's the best sight I've ever used. Yeah, man. I mean, that Dialed is, I remember when Dialed first came out, and I remember telling myself, like, I needed one of those sights. And then to be able to be friends with Scott Bakken and be able to work with Dialed, it's a major blessing. And they are an amazing company with amazing people. So go to dialedarchery.com, check out the Arxos. They have a bunch of different customization options. I know they have a 3D customizer that you can actually use in order to see what your site will fully look like. And there's a lot of big things coming from Dialed this year. So last but not least, going to be Camo Dust. It is the only scent control product that I trust. I've literally been, perfect example, the last year I killed. I was up on top of a ridge with wind swirling all around me, camo dusted down like crazy, and I had a doe show up coming downwind or upwind. I don't know, I get confused by that sometimes. But either way, the wind was in her face, right? Like my scent was going towards her, and I had all that camo dust on me. She never winded me, never acted weird. Nothing crazy ever happened. And, I was able to get a shot on her at about 15 yards. And then she fell over 60 yards away with the VPA Omega that had gone through her chest. So anyway, man, that's all the partners. Thank you to everybody who helps make this podcast happen. As you guys know, I always say this every week. I have to give thanks to the one who makes everything happen, and that is Jesus Christ. He has been an integral part of my life. He has literally saved me from so many different things. And anytime that anything gets tough, he is the one that I go to. And honestly, even when things are good and easy, I'd still turn to him and just have a conversation with him. I'm not pushing this down any of y'all's throats. I'm not pushing on any of this on you guys, but I really, 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 really would suggest that if you are struggling with anything or you're going through a tough time, give him a chance, because he will not disappoint. So, that's my preacher moment. That's all the partners. Kind of a long-ish intro, not too bad, hopefully. But look, man, let's get into it with Jared from OnX. All right, guys, we got Mr. Jared Larsen from OnX. First off, thank you for coming on. I never would have thought that we'd be able to get somebody from OnX on here. It kind of happened pretty quickly, which sometimes that's the best time, right?
Yeah.
So,
Well,
man, like I said, thank you for coming on. We got my buddy Thor here, obviously the big red machine. He had a hand in this, and so. Jared, we first before we dive into all the sweet stuff and everything, how did you get started with OnX? Like, what's the
yeah,
story with that?
100%. So appreciate you having me on. First off, Eric and Thor, I'm excited to chat some whitetails and how OnX can help you make you more successful when you're headed out into the woods. But how I got started at OnX, I guess I really have to attribute it to not really having a clear idea of what I wanted to do after high school and going to college. And so really the deciding factor for me on how I chose where to go to school was resident deer tags in Iowa.
Nice.
And so we actually, an aunt and uncle of mine own a farm that was just generationally in the family in Western Iowa. And so I had hunted it, I believe, one time prior to college, just because it was, every 3 years you could draw a tag. My whole family and extended family is very ingrained into hunting. So then it was like, figuring out who was going to hunt on that year, who could draw a tag. So really, sometimes it was like every 4 years or every 5 years you got to hunt the farm. And so I just called my aunt, who was the technical owner, and I was like, hey, I want to go to school at Iowa State so I can get resident deer tags. Like, can I hunt the farm all 4 years? And she, of course, was like, well, hell yeah, of course.
Nice.
And so that was really what took me to Iowa State was, $29.50 deer tags every year for 4 years in a row. If I could shoot my bow a little bit better at those times, my wall would be a lot more impressive. But I think most bow hunters have those claims.
Yeah.
But yeah, so anyhow, fast forward to my senior year of college. The prior couple summers I had been in Alaska, just being a fishing guide, and that's what I intended to return to do after graduation. But as it goes, I ended up, just kind of cruising job boards and checking out what was available. Saw a job opening for OnX, which was a product that I'd been using in college there. And shot an application and ended up getting my foot in the door at a customer support role back then. And did that for 9 months, answering phones with old men who don't know how to use a phone, let alone an app. And so honestly, it was a really good experience and really good just knowledge of the product and knowledge of the customer, which springboarded me into marketing position, which that's now almost 7 years ago. And so have just grown with the company. I mean, when I started, it was a very different company than it is today. I think I was employee 50 or something like that, and now we're pushing 500. And so it's been cool and just interesting to have a front row seat at all of the growth and change that OnX has experienced. But yeah, that's pretty much how it started. Going to get resident deer tags and ended up kind of making a career out of that.
That's crazy, dude. So first off, how many 200s did you see in Iowa? Because we all know that they live up there.
Yeah, behind every tree. I honestly, this is a little silly, but I've seen more 200s in the town of Missoula, Montana, than I ever saw in Iowa. Missoula, Montana has giant town deer. Like I have a picture of one on my phone from last week that is just a clean, typical 12 that I would bet my bank account he would gross over 2.
Oh.
And
yeah.
can you hunt in Missoula?
What's that?
Can you hunt in Missoula?
No, I mean, so like part of it, there's some small outskirts where if you have more than 2 acres, if you are outside of city limits, you can hunt it. And then there's like a couple, they're like pieces of islands that are public property that people go walk their dogs and whatever on, that you can, it's kind of like a draw hunt. You can draw like a week at a time to go hunt it, and then you have like a particular set of days that you can hunt there. But that said, like I know a guy in town that shot a 204 last year.
Cool.
Wow. That's wild.
Yeah.
So you guys basically can't do like what Seek One does over here and just go knock on a door and be like, "Hey, can we hunt your property?" and then kill a giant.
No, I'm sure there's stipulations where they're doing it too, whether it be Nashville or Atlanta or what have you. It needs to be X acres or X distance from whatever it may be. But no, in Missoula, where most of the big bucks are, they're pretty dang safe. Which more power to you if you want to go do the suburban thing and hunt in backyards and shoot big deer. Like at the end of the day, a big deer is a big deer, and like I'm not picky about how I get them either. But I don't know, the hunting in somebody's backyard next to a pool between the trampoline and the playhouse. I'll leave that to those that are more interested in doing that than myself. If that's the way they want to shoot a 200, I'll happily go sit in solitude where I can't even hear a car driving by and have a chance at a 140.
Yeah, there is a big difference. Like when I first started, that's all I had was my in-laws' backyard, and what you just described is exactly what I had. So I'm like, oh, he's talking about me right there. But what's cool is all right, so obviously you work with OnX. That actually relates into what I just said is when I was hunting that, I didn't really need any mapping software, right? But then I started branching out, going to public. And now I've got so many pins on public that I have on OnX that it looks like a Christmas tree. Honestly, it's crazy. I mean, Thor knows. He and I share pins on OnX over there all the time. So, I mean, what have you seen from the beginning of when you started there to now? Because in the past, I think 4 years I've been using OnX, it has changed so much. Huge changes. So, I mean, what have you seen?
Well, yeah, and of course, our founder, he was a hunting guide in Eastern Montana. And like, that's where this all started is he was just frustrated at the lack of information and data. Well, it wasn't a data problem. It was really a product solution problem. The data existed on, each individual state's website. They had the parcel data. It was available, but you couldn't take it with you. And so, it really started as solving a Western hunting problem because there are not fences and there are not, a sign at every corner of public land notating that, hey, this is public ground, And so like just seeing the change of being a product that was there to solve a problem, particularly in the West, but evolve into something that has become a solution for every species of hunter, whether you're a waterfowler, an elk hunter, or a whitetail hunter. There are more tools in that app than 99.8% of our users will ever even discover. And so like, I really, it's been super fun to be a part of that and be on the backside of all of our information to help build those data, those rich layers, those new features to ideate, what does a whitetail hunter need in order to be more successful? And then at the end of the day, like so much of our progress comes from our customers. Folks that write in saying, hey, like we need some additional waypoint colors or give me this icon or, like compass mode. Like that was actually born from a customer writing in saying like, hey, you need a few different things made when you click your location twice and it gives you that sight cone, like add this, that, and the other thing. And we're like, oh yeah, that would actually not be that difficult of an add and something that would be a major time efficiency and benefit to be able to understand any distance from your current location in a very dynamic manner. So I think that's kind of been the most fun aspect of all the change that has happened at OnX is watching it go from, something that any hunter could use to something that is built for any hunter. And it really is true. Like all of our species leads on the hunt team, like it really is built for, if I only could hunt one thing the rest of my life, it'd be whitetails. If our Western big game guy who leads all things Western big game. If you only could hunt one thing, it would for sure be elk. Same with our waterfowl guy. Our waterfowl guy might end up a turkey hunter, but like then his dog wouldn't have a purpose in life, so maybe not. And then like our upland species lead, like he lives to chase upland birds. So like when we say built by whitetail hunters for whitetail hunters, or by elk hunters for elk hunters, like it really truly is. And that's not only just the marketing team, but bleeds down through our engineers. Like we work really, really hard to find software engineers that have an interest in the outdoors and are out there living it and breathing it and understanding it, because it is integral to creating a product that is as dynamic and as usable as the Hunt app is. It's not smoke and mirrors when we say that. We are truly putting the product through the paces before customers ever see an update of X feature or X layer.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of need that if you're going to have a product that actually works for hunters. Is you need hunters that are working on it. You don't want somebody from LA coming in and be like, all right, cool. So what do we have? And they're like, all right, we need to know the wind direction and the rut timing for whitetails over here in Louisiana. And they look at you like, what's the rut? And then you got to explain it all to them. You know what I mean? So I like that. I like the fact that you actually have hunters that are working on this. Thor, I know you told me you've got some questions for Jared. There's one thing I want to look up on OnX. So you want to hit on those, and then I'll come back with the one thing I want to ask him if I'm right.
Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah.
So like you were saying, OnX has come like a long ways. And just in the years that I've been using OnX, I can't remember the first time I got it. But I have noticed within the last year or two, there's been quite a few different upgrades and looks like new features and stuff like that. I wanted to touch on just a little bit. I know we're focused more so on the hunting, but I did notice that OnX, I think it's called OnX Off Road.
Yep.
And then I think I saw that, and then I think there's OnX Fishing now, right?
Yeah, so we actually have 4 verticals now. So we have OnX Hunt, which is like our flagship and first product.
Yeah.
We have OnX Off Road, which was our second product, and honestly is doing really well in the the jeeping, the overlanding, the rock crawling, those space, dirt biking, all those things. Anybody that is looking for a trail that they can take a motorized vehicle down and plan a trip A to Z, like that's what off-road is there for. And then we have OnX Backcountry, which is all about user-generated content, like more like hiking. If you wanted to go for a day hike and you wanted to see information on Kootenai Creek Trail, there'd be some photos and a write-up of this is moderate difficulty.
Nice.
Here's the length. So that's OnX Backcountry, and then we just released OnX Fish. And OnX Fish today is only in Minnesota. And the reason that we did that, we're going to kind of slow roll out OnX Fish. It'll eventually get to nationwide, but really focusing on ensuring that we have the data to really provide a valuable product that we would be proud to accept customers' money from. So like right now it's free in Minnesota. And so like with that, with Fish, we understand that we're not going to replace somebody's $2,000 Garmin Live Scope or their Humminbird or Lowrance unit. And so we're trying to carve ourselves out a little niche that's that pre-planning phase, like somebody that wants to go find a new body of water that they've never been to, understand what species they could expect to find, what quality of fish, whether you're looking for like a trophy walleye or you're looking for those awesome 16 to 20 inch slot eaters. So like providing that data. And then of course having that bathymetry data. So if you have a John boat or you're shore fishing or you're too cheap for that $2,000 Humminbird, like you still have the ability to navigate, find structure, find those topographic changes. Fish are not a whole lot different than deer or any other critter we hunt. They certainly use the bottom to their advantage, and they want to find structure and cover and all that stuff too. So Fish is a fairly new project. I mean, we just launched that in the app stores, I think in April. So A long ways to go and lots to learn into there, but it's been a fun project.
Nice. Yeah, I had got some wind. I don't remember where I heard about it at. I just remember hearing about it, so I wanted to ask about it because I was like, I do a lot of fishing myself in the off season. Um, I dabble in turkey hunting and stuff too. But of course, turkey hunting here in the south and most other places are in the spring, which is when some of the best largemouth fishing is here in the south. So I have a
You
kind of
can't
have
do
a
it all.
yeah. You turkey hunt in the morning, bass fish in the evening. That's what I always tell people. So, um, and the crappie fishing here and stuff like that. So I was just interested in it, and I just was curious about it. That's what I mainly wanted to ask about.
We'll make our way south eventually.
Well, if you guys ever need beta testers, just holler at us because I do enough fishing that I could definitely put in some input. So,
Absolutely will do, because we will get to that point.
yeah, for sure. And there was one other thing I was wanting to know about the OnX Hunt. Now, I think this has been on there for a while, but I just have, like you said, 98% of the people that have it are not going to touch half of the tools on there. And
Nope.
I'm one of those guys because I get on there, I'm like, I have pins everywhere, but and I use like the distance tool a lot.
Yep.
I love that. It honestly helps me. I do waterfowl hunting as well. So when I'm trying to make sure I'm far enough away from something that I can't physically see, because we have to legally be away 300 yards, 600 yards from docks,
Occupied dwelling or a
right,
roadway or
exactly.
whatever.
So I like to use that to my advantage to really help me and give me a decent amount of distance. So I use some of the little things on there, but I had heard somebody talking about the weather prediction. I think or the windage, or maybe it's all in one there. Is that something new, or is that just something I've just never fooled with and it's always kind of been there?
Yeah, no, I mean, like, pieces of it are fairly new, pieces of it are fairly old. And so what I think you're speaking to, so I mean, like, if you tap anywhere on the map, you're going to, you're going to get that query card that pulls up. And if it's on public land or private land, it's going to give you all the land ownership data. But you have the ability to switch that card to a weather tab. And so that is pulling an interpolated weather data source that basically is going to triangulate your location and interpolate like the 3 closest weather stations to your location to give you what is the most accurate weather possible. And so that weather data, I mean, that's been an update that, we've updated a bunch of times in the last year or two, to be able to click any point in the country, click weather, get the weather for that exact location. And then, we have moon phase calendars in there. We have barometric pressure, daily, hourly, sunrise, sunset. I mean, everything that you could possibly need for weather is within the Hunt app.
Nice.
But then I think what you're talking about is more the optimal wind and wind calendar, which is predicated on the use of a waypoint. So if you drop a waypoint, it can be any waypoint. And then you tap on that waypoint. There's 2 options that you can add to waypoints. The first is going to be wind direction. So when you tap on wind direction, you can then choose for it to just show you the current wind, which above that waypoint, it's going to create a little bubble essentially. And if you choose current wind, it's just going to show you with an arrow the direction that the wind is blowing, and then the miles an hour, whether that's 4 or 34, it's just going to kind of have an arrow that's pointing northeast if the wind is northeast, and it says 8 miles an hour. So that's current wind, or you can set optimal wind on any of your waypoints. Typically, it's going to be on like a tree stand location, where you choose, creates a little pie chart for you, and you choose what the optimal wind conditions are for that stand location. So let's say it's your north food plot. You choose optimal wind. You say this hunts on a west and a southwest wind. Those are my optimal wind conditions. Then that little bubble that appears is either going to be red for a bad wind, orange for a marginal wind, or green for a good wind based on what you have selected. And then that little bubble above the waypoint is going to give you the wind direction with the arrow, and then, the green, orange, or red miles an hour. And then immediately upon you doing that, we're automatically going to produce a wind calendar based off of all of your waypoints that have the wind direction set on it. thus forecasting and telling you by sunrise, midday, and sunset for the next 7 days what the wind conditions are going to be at all of those exact locations that you have wind set on.
Okay.
Dude,
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
That was so helpful last year because
it just makes stand selection so much easier, you know, especially if it's like you and a couple of buddies that are hunting in the same general area and you don't want to be boogering his hunt up, even though he might only be 400 yards from you. Like if you just set that on all of your stands, yeah, it takes like 10 seconds to look at your phone and be like, all right, of my 7 stand options, like only 2 of them are viable today, or, you know, whatever it is.
Yeah. I mean, I used it last year and it really helped me in that regard. Like, because I had one spot that I would hunt all the time, and then I had one spot I hunted 4 times. And the reason I hunted it 4 times is because the wind was never good. I would have never known that, you know, because comparing OnX to other, like, I guess, mapping softwares, dude, the other one would have been like, oh yeah, you know, you look at the wind direction and it's like good wind. I look at y'all's and it's like, well, actually it's going this way. And I was like, all right, well, I'm not even going to take a chance. And it worked. I mean, I was successful on 1 or 2 of those hunts, I think. And then saw a deer, never got busted, just didn't have a shot. So, I mean, it's whatever you guys are doing with that wind stuff is great. And it's funny that, you know, that came up because, like, I'm partnered up with Ryan from Scout Tech, and he and I were talking about the wind direction stuff and how they're starting to integrate that in their app. And I was just looking at some photos of one of my target bucks who's at the spot right now, and it was showing like where that was on the map and then the wind direction. So it was kind of ironic you guys were talking about that when I'm looking at it and seeing like, oh, this is exactly what they're talking about. So I need to save it and remember, like, all right, in 7 weeks when it's deer season, this is the wind that I need if it works out.
And then the other thing that I use it for a little bit differently than face value is I have some stands that I hunt, particularly at this property in Wisconsin. There's a lot of topography. Oftentimes thermals play as much of a role as the wind itself. But there's this one particular finger ridge that I sit on that, you know, for whatever reason, no matter what direction the wind is actually blowing, like at that stand, it almost always acts as a north wind. And so, like, you know, there's another spot on that farm where if it is a south wind, there's a 90% chance that wind is actually going to be blowing like predominantly east in that tree stand. And so that's something I do very intentionally with optimal wind is when I have stand locations that are like that, I set the optimal wind a little bit differently than what face value optimal wind is. You know, like when I know if it's blowing south, it's actually an east wind at that stand, you know, I'll set the optimal wind so I know when that stand is actually at optimal conditions, not what our weather data is telling me, if that makes sense. Yeah. Which, like, those types of spots are really hard to mentally keep track of unless they're a spot that you hunt over and over and over again. And so just taking note of those details, you know, it can be the difference of getting winded and blowing that target buck ears onto your neighbors for the next 2 weeks, or, you know, sitting in the right spot and getting the shot off. Yeah, that would be heartbreaking because this is year 2. And I mean, I've said it a lot on these episodes recently, but I basically got these deer trained. I mean, I went and put feed out there today, and like 20 minutes later, a doe comes running in, and I moved cameras and all that stuff. And so if that happened, it'd be heartbreaking. It truly would. So that optimal wind is real. I think what's going to save my ass this year, just like it did last year. But I need to change the subject real quick because I remembered something I had seen one time making pins, and I was scrolling through looking for like either scrape or bedding or whatever. What's the use of, or what's the reason that you guys have a Sasquatch pin on there? Because I was like, what? Y'all trying to tell us something here? Like, what's up?
What do you think it's for?
Yeah, that's a super valid question, and I sometimes wonder the same thing. But I do believe that was just like a repeated customer request of like, hey, I want a Sasquatch pin, just because people are inherently goofy. And I mean, like when I say we try to incorporate as much customer feedback into our product as we possibly can, like that is 100% truth. And so I was like, well, creating a Sasquatch pin ain't that hard. Like, let's give it to them if they want it. And honestly, like people use all sorts of weird combinations of pins to stand for, like my buddy Lake, he uses the rabbit for turkey listening spots because the rabbit has big ears, and like that denotes his like high listening points for somewhere to go in the morning if he doesn't have a bird roosted. Like go stand there and listen. So I couldn't really tell you, and I don't think there's a novelty or particular reason behind the Sasquatch, but if you ever find one out there, you at least have a pin to drop it.
If I ever find one out there, it's getting an arrow through the chest, and I will probably sell it to the Smithsonian.
Yeah, that would be the smart thing to do.
Yeah. So I guess really what I need to know. So finding Bigfoot, they're not using OnX.
They could be. They could be. I have no proof either way, but I hope they are.
Dude, I remember the first time I saw that. I was up over on public land and was marking, where I found a scrape and some camera locations. And I saw that and I was like, huh. I started looking around. I was like, I'm in the middle of the woods right now by myself. And this is on there. I'm like, I'm going to go just in case. I'm not trying to run into that.
A pin you drop randomly, some spot that you send to Thor and tell them it's, hey, this is a real honey hole. I made it a Sasquatch so people wouldn't know. And it's just, straight gar hole.
Well, now I can't do it because it's on the podcast. People are going to
know. Maybe Thor's not the perfect candidate.
That's so funny. Man, yeah. How did the whole Scout Tech thing come along? Because when Ryan told me about that, I've been partnering with Scout Tech now for about a year, and they have been doing some crazy, crazy things. And then he told me that OnX was partnering up with them, and I was like, oh, dude, that's huge, right? Because you guys, let's be honest, you guys are pretty much the biggest mapping company in the hunting industry. Like when Thor told me that he wanted to reach out and all that, because I did think about it, but I kind of look at OnX as like one of those, I don't want to say untouchables, but like someone that's like y'all, I figured y'all would be really hard to get a hold of. And I think it was within 20, 30 minutes that he sent the email. And we set this whole thing up. So, like, how did that Scout Tech thing come along? Like, did you guys reach out to him? Did Ryan reach out to y'all? Like what happened?
Yeah. So, basically trail camera integration, was something that we recognized and wanted to pursue for a number of reasons. Like trail cameras are they're the crack of whitetail hunters. You hear that notification go off that you have a new photo, and it's like that's the first thing I check in the morning when I wake up. Like I don't scroll social media in bed anymore ever, but you damn sure bet that I'm checking all my cell cameras like before I'm out of bed and before my eyes are shut. And then about 30 times between those two times.
Oh yeah.
And so, we realized that pretty much every trail camera company is working to incorporate a map into, their app platform where images are stored and received. And so, us being the mapping standard, if you will, we thought that we could really add value to our customers in a number of ways if we could create some connectivity with trail camera manufacturers, and really spin both of our flywheels, OnX's and the trail camera companies, to get more customers working together with a system that better works for those customers. And so what we were trying to do with that integration is in a lot of the survey data that we did both with our customers as well as just working with Southwick at, hunters and humans at large, is most trail camera users have multiple brands of trail cameras. And when I say trail cameras, I'm mostly speaking to cell cameras at large. but you can certainly connect and integrate and upload SD cameras to OnX as well. But so that was a problem that we found out was much more pervasive than we originally thought, as far as people owning multiple brands of cell cameras. And right there, you have to use multiple brands of apps just to simply receive photos. So that was a problem we recognized. And then the second one is, there's a fair amount of predictive models out there on telling you when to hunt, where you should hunt, whatever it may be. And all of them are really just based off either scientific deer studies, which happen in non-hunting environments, insurance data based on like car collisions and time of year, anecdotal hunters' experiences based on weather conditions and a number of other factors. And that's pretty much what goes into any number of the predictive models that you can go find out there telling you when to hunt, be it, a deer cast, a Huntwise, a Spartan Porch, whoever it is. And so what we realized could be done with trail cameras is we could provide insights not on anecdotal weather data, not on scientifically collared deer, not on insurance collision data, but we could provide insights on your deer, on your property, and give you your data. Because all that metadata, time of day, temperature, wind direction, wind speed, moon phase, all that stuff exists in every trail camera photo. And so that's really the end state that we want to be able to provide is, hey, you have X number of photos of these bucks on your property. Well, we're going to extract the patterns that would take you dozens of hours to do manually, and we're just going to generate that for you to say, hey, you got 47 different photos of your target buck. Well, here's the predominant wind direction that he shows up on the north food plot. Here's the number of photos that you have in daylight. Of those 47, only 6 are in daylight. Well, all 6 of those happen to be between 6:30 in the morning and 8 in the morning at your south gate. Well, that means he's probably coming back to bed somewhere in that south gate realm. And basically just provide the analysis that you could go out there and do yourself. You could put it in an Excel spreadsheet, and like for years that was something that I did. It just is very manual and takes a really, really long time. And so that's like the end state and the end goal of that trail camera integration. And Scout Tech came to be because they were a partner that was interested and willing to integrate with us, as were Bushnell and Covert. And so that's really how that started is, there's a couple novel problems out there that we realized need solved. And I mean, frankly, we're still working on solving them because it's not at all a finished state product at this point. But that's how it all started. That's where it's going. We essentially just want to help you pull out the data from the deer on your property to make you more efficient and more successful in the field.
Okay, so for the monkey brain people like me, can you explain how I would be able to take, and if you're not sure with the Scout Tech side of the app or whatever, that's fine. But can you explain like how I would be able to take that data or basically get my cameras connected with OnX to basically either go into OnX or go into Scout Tech and have it where I can look at that data, like the historical data?
Yeah, like as far as how does it work from a technical perspective, so that your photos that are taken by your Radix camera or your Exodus camera or whatever Scout Tech camera you're running and how they end up in OnX?
Yeah. Basically, like if I were to, I'm pretty much asking how I would get the two integrated together.
Got it. Yeah. So, with Scout Tech, obviously Scout Tech is a very unique provider of cell camera data, really. Like that, to my knowledge, they don't have a hardware piece they own. They don't have a camera under Scout Tech. It's a number of brands that don't have the tech stack to build an app. Scout Tech saw that opportunity, realized it, built their app to basically work with multiple brands of cameras. But it's really quite easy. If you're running the Scout Tech app, particularly with Exodus cameras, you can go in right to Scout Tech, and in your settings, you can connect to OnX, which you tap that little button, you're going to get sent to OnX to log in with your OnX information. Once you do that, they're going to seamlessly connect, and all of your trail camera photos not only will show up in Scout Tech, but they will also show up in the OnX Hunt app, because what you are doing when you hit connect to OnX is you're essentially initiating our trail camera tool to mark that trail camera. If it's a trail camera that's GPS enabled, it's going to drop that trail camera right where your trail camera sits today. If it's not, it's going to just drop it on your current location wherever you are, and you can simply move it to its location. But that's really as simple as it is. And on the back end engineering side, it's some API plugins, and my joke with the engineering team is always, it's just 2 lines of code, which it's more than that. They don't necessarily appreciate my sentiment, but they certainly get it done for us. And I'm excited to see where the trail camera integration and analysis goes. It's no secret that pretty much every trail camera company is trying to do the same thing right now, be it the brands under Scout Tech, be it the Moultrie, be it TactiCam, whoever it is. Like they're all trying to give their customers data insights on deer on their property. So I mean, it's interesting. I think iron sharpens iron, if you will, and I think if there's multiple brands trying to accomplish the same thing, it's only going to pull the best out of all of them.
Yeah, I just actually, when you were explaining that, was going step by step, and I found it on there, and I feel like an idiot because I never hit the little tab side that shows you all the other options, because I'm just looking for photos, man. Like I'm trying to see the deer, right? So I didn't even know. I guess I probably should have known that, considering I push Scout Tech every week.
I mean, man, it's one of those things. Like as I said, a lot of people just use our app as a parcel viewer, which at the end of the day, that is certainly our bread and butter, is our accuracy and cleanness of the data that we do provide on ownership information. But I also, we really take pride in how usable our app is. I can give this app to a 70-year-old that has very little smartphone experience, and they can navigate the app, and they can certainly be dangerous with parcel information. But there's only 5, there's 6 buttons at face value across your app, and there's nothing you can do to break that app. You can press them all you want, and you're not going to do anything you can't undo. So I always tell people, if you want to get the most out of OnX, sit there and play with your phone instead of scrolling Instagram or Facebook Marketplace or whatever it is your scrolling option is. Replace that with 20 minutes of playing with the Hunt app, and you're going to learn how to save maps. You're going to find layers like acorn producing oaks and slope angle. You're going to find tools that you never knew existed, like 2-finger line distance, where if you just place 2 fingers on the map at the same time, it automatically draws that line. Or one for you that doesn't sound like you found for your duck hunting. If you drop a waypoint on your duck blind, you can tap on that waypoint, and there's a range radius option. You can set a radius around a waypoint to show, hey, set a radius of 300 yards around this waypoint, and that you can't hunt that. Or maybe in a whitetail scenario, I do this quite a bit. If I find a buck bed, I'll set a waypoint radius around that buck bed of 80 yards. I don't want to get closer than 80 yards to where a buck is bedding, but I'm pretty confident that if I'm 80 yards from that deer, I can get up into a tree without him ever knowing I exist. And then I know I'm in the cards, because he's probably going to move 40 yards before dark by the time he gets up. So there's just so many tools that can just give you slight edges or slightly more information than you would have otherwise, that'll lead to more successful hunts.
I didn't even think of doing that.
Yeah.
I'm going to be doing that tonight because I've got so that target book I was telling you about that I was looking at when you were explaining some of that stuff was I drove through like, well, Thor, what was it, 2-3 months ago, probably 2 months ago. I was driving through to go put food out and all that stuff. And, you know, I go put the feed out, whatever, back up, go to leave because it's 1 acre, right? Like it's 1 acre on a lake. It's not, it's connected to hundreds.
You're hunting this deer on 1 single acre.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Dude. Well, and the thing is like I mean, really I don't want to say it's like what Seek One does, but if you compare the size of their like spots to the spots that I've got, it's the same thing, except it's out in the country. Right.
Yeah.
And so I'm leaving this spot and I just happen to look over and there he is bedded up on top of this little ridge. He's watched me put the feed out and he's just bedded up, chilling, doesn't care. I'm in my work van. I roll the windows down. I'm freaking out. And it's like 4 months before season, and I'm just sitting there shaking like, dude. And he was a lot bigger in person. I've seen him in person 2 times after that, and he just keeps growing. It's insane. But that bedding idea is helpful because it's like if he was bedded there, you know, yes, it was probably within 80 yards of where I was, but it's the same idea. If I can go through and sort of act like normal and slip in there, he might see me, but he might not think anything of it. So I'm gonna play with that tonight. I'm gonna see what other features on that side of it there are that I don't even know about. Because all I've used it for is, you know, tracking where I'm walking, putting pins down, the wind, and the rut. I guess the rut prediction. So it sounds like I have a lot to learn on that app.
Well, yeah, I mean, you and everybody else, like, you know, people find what works for them, and if it's working. You know, as they say, if it's not broke, don't fix it. So, you know, to each their own. I mean, there's many people that don't really use anything beyond the parcel viewer, you know, waypoints and a track, and that's what they need to be more successful.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be using a lot of the new stuff whenever I find it. I mean, like I said, I'm going to play with it tonight because I'm really trying to get a public land deer. I haven't gotten one yet. I've gotten quite a few photos.
One that should help for public land deer, at least it really helps me. Slope angle is a layer that I know how to read topo like just fine. I love topo maps, but slope angle just like brings it all to life, and just makes it so stupid easy to understand like what's really steep, what's not really steep, where benches are. And then like after I kind of turn slope angle on and I get an idea of like, okay, that could be a good thermal hub, or that's a sweet bench, or like, holy shit, that whole side of that hillside is basically a cliff. Like that's going to be a major funnel pinch point area that pinches those deer to have to go over this saddle or whatever it is. And then I'll turn on 3D exaggeration. Have you guys played with 3D and the elevation exaggeration at all?
Yeah. Yeah. When I saw the elevation I was at on my last hunt last year, I about freaked out.
Yeah. So like elevation exaggeration has been huge for me in areas, especially in areas that just don't have that much topography. Or even areas that have a lot of topography. It makes it very obvious where what is. And so when I'm looking for public spots, you know, most of the time there's not good food on public. Like you are trying to find where a deer is bedding or traveling from bedding to food when you're hunting public ground. And so finding those natural terrain funnels, those natural pinch points has really been how I've found success on public, and using those, you know, slope angle and 3D with elevation exaggeration are great ways to identify those funneling terrain features.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I used that last year on public and it helped a lot. I mean, one thing I've noticed, and Thor, you can input on this one if you want, because you and I talk about it all the time, is if you look at the topo lines, my buddy Clifton Denny told me on a podcast one time, look for the fat lines. And he was right. I mean, I was shocked. I put most of my cameras on fat lines on the top of the topo map. And I mean, literally, dude, I pulled cards this past weekend and there was, I mean, 2 or 3 really up and coming bucks that I'm just like, how did you, because I didn't even realize it was a fat line until after I put the camera out. So I mean, have you noticed that? Like just looking at the topographical side of it, have you been in any area that I guess you could call it like a fat line area and seen anything of note? Or is that kind of just, I guess, like a specific area type of thing?
That's a really interesting observation by Clifton there. I was actually talking to him a couple weeks ago. Yeah, he's a really good source of knowledge and a map nerd, no doubt about it. I have never really taken notice of like a fat line on a topo map, but I'm wondering if that is well, he could mean, I guess, a couple things, but I'm wondering if those just end up being more benched out areas on a hillside.
Yeah. I mean, I've noticed that it's like the lowest point. Every one that I've been to, it's always the lowest point. And I'm like, well, I mean, I'm still learning deer. Obviously, I feel like we all are, because no one really knows.
If you're not, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, like even Dan Anfalt and John Eberhart learn deer every year,
Oh, yeah.
So I'm just kind of I'm picking your brain a little bit on it because it's like, you work with this stuff, so I'm trying to maybe get a leg up on it. Like, all right, well, are you guys seeing that, or is that just something that maybe no one's really looked at except for Clifton?
Well, and yeah, I honestly, I guess, not being a cartographer, I don't really know what the fat lines represent, other than I always just took them as like, that was the next 100 elevation foot marker. And I mean, what I look for in topo lines is the gap between two topo lines. You'll have a hillside that's like, line stacked, and then there's like a very obvious gap between two lines, and that to me, I'm like, that's a bench that jumps out as either like an easy travel route, traversing that hillside, or potentially like a good bedding area depending on what the surrounding habitat was. So I think you hit the nail on the head. Like every individual has kind of their own little secret sauce on what they look for in a map to mean a good spot. And it's always eye-opening when you find a new secret sauce where you're like, holy smokes, how did I overlook this for so long?
Yeah. So I've got two more things I want to ask you before we wrap this up. And Thor, if you have anything else, just let me know. You mentioned one thing earlier about being able to see acorn producing trees.
Yep.
How did you guys figure that out, and how does that work? Because on public out here, when acorns start falling, that is where you want to be. I'm sure it's the same with you guys. So like how can we use that? Like if I go on OnX tonight and I look at my public land spots and I'm like, all right, turn on, because I have seen it.
Should be in the layers, I believe.
Yeah, I just don't understand what I'm looking at really.
So what you're looking at, it's a really good question. So that's it's data that we sourced actually from a timber harvest company that they basically use the reflectivity of leaves to understand what type of tree is there predominantly. And so we actually did a lot of field testing with these layers because, as I'm sure you guys have thought, it's like, yeah, bullshit, OnX can tell me where the oak trees are in this giant stretch of timber.
Yep, they can.
And like, I honestly thought the same thing, but we found that it was, somewhere between 80 and 90% accuracy. And so the way we market it, I've never put in my marketing comms like, go to the yellow square in the acorn producing oaks layer and you're going to find one hell of a white oak tree. What it's telling you is in each, they call them pixels. So in each pixel, which is the little box that you'll see when you turn the layer on, that represents a 30 foot by 30 foot area that has been identified as predominantly that tree species. Doesn't mean it's only going to be oaks. It just means that is the predominant species in that area. So that's how it works. And then when you go into the layer, so if you go into your map layers and then down to trees, crops, and soil is the folder, you're going to find a number like acorn producing oaks, coniferous versus deciduous, thermal, deer cover, wetlands. There's a number of habitat layers in there. And so when you have acorn producing oaks, is directional data. Like it's giving you a great starting point on where there are going to be mass producing oak trees. You'll have red, which is going to be your red oaks. You'll have the yellow color, which is going to be your white oaks. And then you'll have an orange that is mixed oaks. So, it could be a mix of red and white oaks. And as you guys know, like there's a bunch of species of both red and white oaks. So if you know that deer in your area really love the water oaks, but don't really care about the pin oaks, like that's still going to take further ground truthing and boots on the ground for you to figure out. But what I tout our acorn producing oaks layer as is an invaluable scouting tool to save you time on running around boots on the ground to understand where there are actual mass producing oak trees.
Okay.
Because as you guys know, like not every oak tree produces mast every year, and some oak trees produce a banner amount of mast as compared to other oak trees. So it's about finding the right oak tree, and this layer is just going to simply shorten the amount of time that it's going to take you to find that tree.
Gotcha. Well, I am going to be updating that tonight also. I want to show you real quick because we were talking about that wind stuff. I'm going to show you the deer that when I kill him, I'm going to be tagging you guys in it.
Oh, hell yeah.
I'm going to be using your, and hopefully it shows up well, but I'm going to be using the wind and all that stuff we've been talking about for this deer. So Thor, you know exactly who I'm talking about, but that is trike.
Oh, all I'm looking at is Thor's face. So Eric, you better do some talking.
No.
Can you see him? Here, hold on. Let me move it around. There you go.
There we go. Oh, dude, is that just a giant 6-pointer?
So here's the story with him real quick. He was a big 6 last year, and I saw him my first sit on that property, the second season or the second sit of the season last year. Had him at 45 yards, but he got spooked. I don't really know what happened, but he ran off, couldn't get a shot. So I'm chasing him all year long. When he drops his left side, no, wait, let me think. I have his shed upstairs. Yeah, left side, middle of November. No idea why. Wow. Yeah, just no. I think he got sick or rutted too hard or something, right? So I knew that this year he was going to be big. Well, I've had him on camera all year long because I feed pretty much every week out there, just to keep him healthy and all that. And he was supposed to be like as you can tell, a really big 6. I think it was the second week of June. He showed up on a Monday, just beautiful 6-point, everything. The next day he shows up, half of his left side is missing. He broke his main beam. Don't know why, don't know how. So technically he's a big 5, but he's kind of growing a little bit of a nub, and I think he might have like a small kicker or something. So God knows what he's going to turn into. But all I know is that I'm going to be using everything I can on OnX to make sure that my first sit there, that deer is down. So be ready to get flooded with a bunch of photos because it's coming. It's coming.
So he broke his main beam off in June.
Yeah, I think so. That's a deer I told you I've seen in person multiple times this year. And while he seems like he's kind of trained, he doesn't mind people. Like my grandparents own that spot or that property. And I saw them the other day and they were like, dude, did you see that big deer? I'm like, you talking about trike? And they're like, yeah, he's like a big 6-point or something. I was like, yeah, he shows up every single day. I put food out. They hear my truck coming. They come running out of the woods to go eat. It's crazy. And they're like, yeah, he's always drinking out of our bird bath and all of that. I talked to one of the neighbors and he was like, oh yeah, we see him all the time. He doesn't care about people.
Yeah.
But, obviously when deer season comes in, you know, you have to be more careful. So yeah, man, he's the number 1 right now. There's other bigger deer I have on camera, but they're so sporadic that it's not as good. But that kind of leads me into my next question. So like I said, before we wrap this up, I had 2 questions. The last one I want to ask you is, what is your opinion on, I guess, and I'm not trying to throw anyone under the bus. I don't want to put you in a position where you have to say anything negative. I'm just plain out curious. What's your idea on the whole GPS collar, I guess, movement forecast data Because like, I don't understand how that works.
Well, so yeah, there is so much interesting science out there on deer.
Nope.
Like we have a really close partnership with National Deer Association, and they do awesome things for hunters and whitetails across the country. But your ears can only be so open, I think, especially when it comes to hunting. Like the GPS collared deer study data, it's super interesting. I love to look at it. I love to take it in. I love to be in a captive audience for it. Do I let that affect how I am going to hunt a deer that is thousands of miles away and not at all that same deer on a closed WMA to hunting or some giant private tract, or just a deer that's in Mississippi and I'm hunting in Kansas? Like, there's a deer is a deer is a deer to some level. But there's also scientific data out there that claim cold fronts have no effect on deer movement. Like, you can tell me that that's scientific data. You can tell me that it has statistical significance and was proven through scientific data. I don't care. You are wrong. A cold front gets deer moving in October. It just does.
Yep.
And so, like, I think it's all interesting. I think it's awesome that there's people out there that get to do that for a living and are doing it for the betterment of the deer loving community. At the end of the day, there's nobody that loves deer more than the people that hunt them. There's nobody that loves ducks more than the people that hunt them. Like, hunters are the largest wildlife advocates this country has. And I think the fact that there's people that are doing research on those critters for a living is awesome, and I will always be a captive audience for them. Am I going to hunt based off of their scientific information if it applies to me? Otherwise,
and that's
interesting.
Why I wanted to ask you that right there. What you said is why I wanted to ask you, because I use a mix of different apps, right? Like, majority I use OnX and Spartan Forge. I've used DeerCast in the past, and it's not anything against it, just never really was accurate, right?
Yep.
And
well, they're just trying to predict like a good day of deer movement based on weather. Like,
yeah. I mean,
you should go sit your ass in a tree stand when you have a cold front in October. But
100%. I just figured that was kind of obvious.
That a deer is going to walk by that day.
Exactly. So when I heard about, like, because I started off with OnX, right? Like, when I first got into hunting, that's what I was using. And then Spartan Forge came out, and I heard the GPS collar thing, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So I started looking into it more, and I'm like, well, wait a minute. How are you tracking that? Like, are these Georgia deer, or is it, Illinois deer that move completely different? Because Georgia deer and Illinois deer are not the same animal. I lived in Illinois for 7-8 years before I moved down here, and I watch deer all the time, and I promise you they are not the same. So that's why I wanted to ask, because it's like, on one hand, does it sound cool? Yes. On the other, is it actually accurate to where we are? I can't really say it is. So that's why I was wondering, like, so basically you guys have everything that can help predict deer movement, but you don't say, oh, based off GPS data from a deer 1,000 miles away, they're gonna move, right?
No, we have no predictive analysis of any type in the Hunt app today. Again, like, that's what we are trying to build with trail cameras based on your trail camera photos of trike on your property that you can hunt. Like, we want to give you those insights that they're factual insights. They're not predictive. We are telling you this is what that deer did when on these given conditions, not this collared deer in some unknown location is more predisposed to move today versus tomorrow. Like, and I think to some degree, all of that, no matter who it's coming from, I don't know that it's built to be taken at face value as much as it is built, or at least this is the way I use it. Like, I used DeerCast in years past, and like, DeerCast never once made me stay home from a hunt that I intended to go on. But deer cast did a couple of times when I was, be it hungover or just feeling really lazy, or there was a really good 2:30 p.m. football game on that I wanted to catch. And DeerCast said, it is going to be a good evening. It kind of helped me get that push out the door and that little extra bit of motivation that I needed to go sit again that day. But to me, that's all they are. Is they're just an opportunity to slightly increase your confidence, give you that little bit of boost that you might need to go sit for the 6th time in the last 10 days, or go sit in a tree instead of watching the Packers, or whatever it is. And if that's what you need to get out into the tree more, drink the Kool-Aid. Like, whatever it takes to get you to spend more time in the tree, do it.
Yep.
I mean, I don't know if I probably wouldn't watch the Packers either way, but I'm also from Chicago, so it's a little bit different. But,
you don't get to watch anybody win, is all that means.
Yeah, no, believe me, I know. I don't claim them. I just hear it. I gotta give you shit for it. But yeah, man, I just, what OnX is doing, I didn't realize you guys were doing as much as you are, honestly. Like, I knew about the Scout Tech stuff. I knew that there was some integration going on there. And I'd always wondered why, OnX never had like a predictive model, right? But you kind of do, because if you look at, the wind direction, I know you guys have a rut forecast. That helped me a lot last year. And, now that we've got these photos are going to be integrated with the mapping, you basically have it, but it's also not a like countrywide thing. It's a specific area thing. So I like that, dude. I think that's a really good idea, because then you get more data from, historical photos, rather than just being like, oh, today's a good day to go, or, oh, deer in Iowa are moving, so maybe in Georgia they will, and I'm not trying to knock them. It's just with you on it, like, if we're going to be doing some sort of predictive thing, we need to have it be more centralized to where you are, not just a generality. You know what I mean?
100%. And again, like, beauty is all in the eye of the beholder. Like, if that's your thing, that you get up and you check in the morning all fall, like, is today a good day to hunt according to whatever app? Like, if that's what gets you into the tree, use it. Great.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like, the only way that I know you cannot kill a deer is if you're sitting on the couch.
Yep.
And,
I know a couple rednecks that would argue with you on that, because they can just open
there
their window and,
with certain houses that can kill a deer from the couch, but not very many of them. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, hunt the wind, get out into the woods, and if it's not fun, why are you doing it? Make it fun, and use the Hunt app to hopefully, skew those odds just a couple percentage points further in your favor.
Hell yeah, man. Well, Thor, you got any more questions, buddy?
Sorry, I've had a bad cough this whole freaking
No, you're good.
podcast, but no, I think he answered most of the questions I had earlier on. We really appreciate you coming on and just talking with us a little bit further in depth about what OnX has to offer and what all y'all are doing currently, and touching base on that fishing and stuff like that. That's really good. I look forward to seeing that in the future. So I have used OnX a ton to kill deer, and Eric learned that I am really good at aerially scouting with OnX, and OnX has helped a lot learning those hardwoods versus pines, and I can saddles and pinches and stuff. So I contribute OnX to a lot of my successful hunts, man, and I love what they're doing, and I'm just glad to see it, and I can't wait to keep using it in the future. So
yeah, well, I'm definitely deleting all my other ones.
It's pretty cool. Like, it's a very good intrinsic feeling once you've kind of like figured out the recipe that a deer needs when looking at an aerial map. Because whether you're in Georgia, in Kansas, in Iowa, in Montana, like, yes, the landscape changes, the vegetation is different, the topography is different. But if you can kind of find those commonalities in what you found to work in Georgia, like, the mix of topography, the mix of vegetation, it's very translatable to new states and new places.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like Illinois deer might act different than Georgia deer, but at the end of the day, they need the same things. They need food, they need water, and they need cover. And
That's
if
right.
you can learn how to understand and identify those things from a map perspective, the amount of time saved from having to walk around thousands of acres to find the X or that spot, that inherently is going to make you probably more successful than any other one activity that you can hone your skills on. Like if you can become a very effective and efficient e-scouter, that is probably one of the most valuable skills you can have as a hunter.
Yeah, I mean, we're planning on going to Illinois next year, so you better believe I'm gonna be wearing OnX out.
Oh yeah, I've already been on it. I was on it for like 2 or 3 days straight, just looking at stuff, looking at property, looking at this, looking at that. So
yeah, if we find a 200 up there, I'll be giving you guys all the credit.
Well, I hope you do. I know there's some in that neck of the woods. I don't know where, but I hear rumblings of Illinois public land 200s.
Well, who knows, dude? We could get lucky and stumble upon a 300 like Luke Brewster did. I mean,
you just never know.
Yeah, that's never gonna happen. But look, man, I appreciate you coming on. This honestly, you know, I'm very happy that this happened, truly, because like I said before, I've held OnX at such a high level for years and always thought about reaching out. I just really thought it was kind of like one of those things that, you know, you reach out to a company and say, hey, you know, you guys interested, and then you never hear back. You know, so I really appreciate you reaching back out to us and us being able to schedule this whole thing. This was fun, dude. I learned a lot. Like and I'm telling you, as soon as we get off here, after I get the kids to bed, I'm deleting probably all my other stuff except for OnX, because it sounds to me like everything is much more accurate, and it's not. It's just going to be more helpful. So thank you for making my my app list a little shorter, and also my hunting stuff a lot easier.
Well,
I
appreciate it, fellas. Thank you for the kind words, and yeah, no, I really enjoyed being on here. We'll have to do it again when we have a couple kill stories to share. You know, about 5 months from now. So, Eric, Thor, it was a pleasure, boys, and look forward to staying in touch.
Awesome.
Sounds good. Thanks.